Now, please welcome back to the stage Caitlin Frazer, Executive Director of the NSCEB, who will moderate our next panel entitled Maximizing Biotechnology for Defense. Please welcome our panelists. Paul Arcangeli, Commissioner on the NSCEB. James Mazol, performing the duties of Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. Dr. P.J. Maykish, Senior Advisor at the Special Competitive Studies Project, and retired General Timothy Ray, President and CEO of Business Executives for National Security.
All right. Well, every time I get to hear Angie talk about what she does, I get so excited and inspired. And I think it's such a great, it's like someone planned it. It's such a great segue into this conversation, which is around how we can maximize the benefits of biotechnology for our warfighters, for our military, and for our national defense. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk with y'all this morning. And let's just get into it. Paul, you have served as a commissioner on the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotech the last couple of years. And although you have a background in biology, you have a degree in biology, I have been on many a visit, many a trip where you and I have gotten to see applications of biotechnology in a military context or that would have military relevance that I think surprised both of us. So I wonder if you could get us started in talking about some of the things that have been eye-opening for you, examples of things that perhaps you wish you had access to or that you wish had been available to you when you served in the military early in your career.
So the one that comes to mind first is the biocon. Oh.
Let's wait for your mic.
How about now?
Is biocon.
One more time? Okay.
Test.
We could try to shout, but yeah.
You could carry it.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to talk to somebody else. We're going to figure out Paul's mic situation, and we'll come back to this. PJ, let me ask a similar question of you. You have been working in the national security space, military space a long time. And I know you, through your work at SCSP, have had an opportunity to think about this intersection of biotechnology and military capabilities. Help us, if there's an example that really resonates with you, or maybe you want to zoom us out a little bit and talk about the macro picture of how we can maximize the benefits of a powerful general purpose technology like biotech for defense.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caitlin, and congratulations on being done at this stage of the
Thank
commission. Good morning, everybody. I'm not sure my mic's working, so I'm just going to try to project.
No, you sound great. You sound great.
Is it working? All right, good. I think to zoom out, when you think about biotechnology in the military, it's almost like thinking about a general purpose technology. So you think like, how did electricity affect the military, or how did the machine age affect the military? Biotechnology is like this. It's a general purpose technology that will probably subtend many functions in society. And so when I think about it, I think it's really easy to break down in sort of four categories. You can think about how biotech is going to help the warriors internally, on the warrior, around the warrior, and sort of for the warrior. And so you see these exciting things about longevity biotech and optimization. I think the warriors in DoD would benefit a lot from that branch of technology. In terms of things that are on the warriors, I think there's a lot of things like wound care that are ready to break out. There's a lot of companies and FDA approval with that. I think if you think about the Band-Aids you used to use, I don't know if anybody's seen the gel Band-Aids now that accelerate healing, but they're amazing. Gluing your stitches shut, those things are all, imagine that 100 years from now. I think around the warriors, you can think a lot about biomanufacturing. Yeah. So I know in the third offset 10 years ago, we were pushing nanoenergetics being biomanufactured. And so just for everybody's feeling in the diverse audience, you can literally make the constituent elements of explosives through biomanufacturing, called energetics and even nanoenergetics. And so I think that will be a great thing that will transform. And then finally, for the warrior, I think if you think about how even brain-computer interfaces are going to help quadriplegics walk. You can see biotech for the warrior as well. So I think in those 4 broad categories, you can see biotech 100 years from now, like a general purpose technology, moving the department forward.
Yeah, thanks, BJ. Paul, how are we doing on your mic? No? No. We still need a new mic, please.
But this, we could share.
James, let me turn to you. You're currently leading the element of the Department of Defense that is responsible for a lot of the really exciting biotech work and frankly, the biotech coordination across the department. Let's pick up on some of the things that PJ outlined. What do you think, what do you think the department is doing really well with biotechnology right now? And what do you imagine is over the horizon as we start to drive these technologies forward in a defense context?
Great. Well, thank you, and congratulations to the commission. I've read the report a couple of times now, and I'm very impressed with the quality of the analysis and the fact that it has really actionable recommendations in it. So of the many reports that we get, this is one that's going to make a real impact, not just in the department, but I think across the government. Let me just answer your question by talking a little bit about what we do in R&E, and I can sort of talk about some things that we're doing well. From a coordination point of view, in R&E, we have the responsibility of looking out across the entire department, understanding what the services are doing, understanding what DARPA's doing, DARPA's under me, and also in the industrial base and the internationals. And then we in R&E set the strategic direction for the department, the roadmap, and then I think where we provide the most value, and this has a really nice point of contact with what the commission is recommending, is trying to re-vector if we see misalignment compared to where we want to go with our roadmap, because we have that department-wide visibility, we're able to try and get the ship back on course. So I think that's something that we do really well from a coordination point of view. And then the other thing I would mention, well, 2 more. The second is technology protection. That's huge, really comes through in the report. And we have the responsibility for ensuring that the department's programs have technology protection so that it doesn't end up in the wrong hands. And then finally, there's this issue of joint requirements and joint capabilities that's becoming more urgent, and this is where I think we really excel in R&E. So if you think about the fact that the services are organized, train, and equip, but what do you do, and I think biotech is really in this area, where you have a joint requirement, a joint need. This is where we in R&E can identify that, and through the authorities we have with respect to prototyping and experimentation, can start to get the technology through the system a little bit, and then hope to find a service champion. So those are some things that we're doing, I think, pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How are we doing? Feeling good?
I got it.
Yeah, look at us.
Yeah, this
All
has
right,
been the
let's
easiest
go.
panel I have ever been on.
Let's go. So Paul, one of the things that we spent a lot of time on in the work of the commission was we have no shortage of inspiration and innovation, not only coming out of our of places like DARPA, of places like the services labs, but sometimes the department hasn't been a great end customer of these promising technologies. And so, James had an observation about the need to kind of pull things through. And could you talk a little bit more about kind of why you think that is so important in a defense context and some of the commission's kind of observations around that?
Yeah, if you told me when I got my degree in biology that I would use it in this way, I would have laughed at you. Everybody said, why are you getting a degree in biology to be in the Army? Like, you're never going to use that. And here it is, a warfighting discipline now. Biotechnology is going to be a warfighting discipline. It is. We just need to convince people that this is more than what they think it is. They don't understand the length and breadth of what biotechnology can bring to the warfighter. And you know, in the Department of Defense, you don't get extra points for taking risk if you're procuring things. You get the wrong thing and it doesn't work, you get in trouble. So we need to convince people that this is an opportunity for drop-in replacements that eliminate supply chain bottlenecks, drop-in replacements that are going to allow the warfighter at the very front, pointy end of the spear to eliminate logistics problems, to take things to the front. And also that we're going to be able to reach in and get new capabilities. But if there's no demand signal, then industry's not going to make it, and you can innovate all day long, but there's not going to be anybody to buy it.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So General Ray, let's bring your private sector perspective in here. And what are your observations about this dynamic with promising technologies where we can see an end use, but they might struggle to scale. They might struggle to move from lab to market. How does the private sector think about this dynamic? And you know, what are some tools that we have to help address that?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that there's a couple of really important parts to it. And you know, it was really good for our members to be partners with you all to bring this particular connection together. I think the first thing you have to start with is we had a great military that we built in the 80s and the 90s, and that we never took as a nation a strong enough test to let us become something fundamentally different. We had a lot of margin in the force that we had, and we leveraged it brilliantly. We made good use of it. But the pillars of it kind of stood still: the human capital, the infrastructure, the core tech capabilities in terms of how you manage, sustain, and adopt, and your ability to think about new architectures, new concepts, and new things, but then also the investment in the human capital, the infrastructure, and the tech capacity. So you've anchored that whole thing in the 80s and 90s, and you're out of margin. So you can't just throw innovation at it. You actually have to rebuild the foundation so it can enable the adaptation of innovation. If you can't do that, then it won't stick nearly to the end. But I think when the team that is on the field and the uniform side sees the potential, then they can have a better sense of it. But the market will think of this differently. And one of the things I've learned in the year and a half at Benz is, you know, how the market and how the commercial world responds to risk. The DIB, the Defense Industrial Base, is kind of that family SUV that we've grown comfortable with, that gets what we mostly need at 10 plus or minus 2%. But if we want to do something new and different, you know, money is actually treated better in other places. And so it's still capitalism, and there's certain places that will invest in things with a deeper philosophical bent. But there has to be this collusion of the requirements, concept development, the tests, you know, where R&D does do their experimentation, the tech hubs, those are great. But you actually need to go into something much more real in terms of execution and get the government to work with industry to do things. The government can't do the infrastructure by itself. And if you want biotech infrastructure, you're going to have stuff that scales with different money that doesn't come from Congress. You have to have different relationships. To say that the private equity market or the venture capital market would go after biotech, they might come after a technology that would feature inside of it. But to lean on it as an institution to say it's going to enable it, that's a tough lift. And so you have to have the conversation and the risk dialogues about where the government does come in and create the incentives, right? Where does it create the tax incentives? Where does it create the government-backed loans? You know, what we've done with the strategic capital team is phenomenal. But there has to be not just this idea, but this purposeful dialogue about how we put all those things together, not just at the tech hubs, but then how do we actually enable that to pull it across? I think the tech world enjoys innovation outside the DoD, and it gets much higher rates and it goes faster. But you're going to have to enable both the foundational piece being rebuilt and then the tech. And then I think you have a coherent story where people may come in and invest with a little bit more of a philosophical belief in national security. And they will actually entertain lower margins, or if they can have the incentives. I mean, this is a system of incentives. And I think that's how we have to think about it.
Absolutely. So, James, let me just take it back to you. We were just talking about some of the new, I guess we'll call them new-ish tools that the department has for this kind of strategic investment and to drive capital into things that are important to the department, whether that's DIU or we were talking about the Office of Strategic Capital. What are some ways that those entities are thinking about biotechnology in the context of the department's wider investment strategy into this field.
Yeah, absolutely. So Office of Strategic Capital, we're really excited about. They're going through their first loan process right now. It's for equipment manufacturing, but biotech is one of the 30 plus covered areas that they can invest in. And they were one of the few entities that got an anomaly in the continuing resolution, got additional funding. And so with a relatively small amount of funding, they're able to have a loan capacity that far exceeds what they get in direct appropriations. And this is critical. So you're talking about in their first round, they have close to $1 billion in loan authority, but the appropriations are like 50 million or something like that. So we're really excited about what OSC can do. But just on this broader point of demand creation, heretofore, what I've seen is that we do these Chinese procurement bans. I participated in some of that myself in a previous life on the Senate Armed Services Committee. That's a real blunt instrument, and the department is generally such a small part of the market that I'm not sure that really moves the needle. What I would focus on more is early investment with the services, because at the end of the day, the services are going to have to plan for and budget for procurement of these capabilities. And so one thing that we're really driving at R&E is bringing the services along with us in the early stages of the R&D cycle to build their confidence and to generate that demand, not just force it on them and say, thou shalt buy because we said you will, but to have them actually pulling for it rather than just a really sort of blunt force instrument that we've been doing. So those are some ideas.
Absolutely. I'm going to pick up on something that I raised earlier in conversation with Dr. Rozo and Congresswoman Weiss, which was around the idea of bioliteracy. We talked about it in the context of the Congress and of the American people, but Paul, we also talked about bioliteracy within the U.S. government. And so I wonder if picking up on what James was talking about, that end customer, moving towards the end customer being a real proponent of biotech, wanting to buy, wanting to adopt these capabilities. What do you see as that trajectory, or that, how we get to that place?
First, most people just have no clue. And I see this because as we walk around and talk about the commission report with members of Congress, and we start to talk about what biotechnology can do, and they're astounded because the first thing they think is vaccines and healthcare. They're not really thinking about biomanufacturing or biomining or all the things that they can do in agriculture. So just that bit right there has been eye-opening to me. We need to be able to get the warfighter to understand the same thing. It's not just drop-in replacements that are coming. It's going to be new capabilities that are going to come. And as a private in the Army, if you told me that you could make my pack lighter, make my body armor lighter, or give me food that actually tasted like food, I would have been thrilled. But we have to demonstrate it, because everything looks great on a PowerPoint slide, but we have to demonstrate the capability, and we will have converts who understand what is possible, and then seek to have it made for them.
Yeah, absolutely. PJ, I wonder if there are lessons learned that you could offer from your observations of adoption of other critical and emerging technologies into the department, whether that's AI or autonomy or, take your pick. Advice perhaps for this community, about things that we have done right in the way that we've injected those critical and emerging technologies into our mission set of the department, or things we haven't done well that we could maybe do differently this time.
Yeah. I think there's three basic ways you see tech come through in the DoD. First of all, there's champions. So sometimes you have champions of a technology. They could be top-down, like Bob Work leading the third offset. They could be bottom-up, like majors you never hear about that are in charge of a special access program. But you'll have revolutionaries. I think another one that the report talks about is like a ChatGPT moment.
Yeah.
So in the military, of course, innovation, as it diffuses in the history of this, the military innovation literature, there are these shocks to the system. And so sometimes there's a shock that gets everybody to adopt. And then I think the third one, and maybe the most important way that biotech will be done, is by actual programs. And so every time you're trying to show the military to speak a language, you have to show them the capabilities. And so to the degree that DoD has stretch goals and programs, because what people think is possible in biotech, what's actually possible is probably not the same. These programs stretch that goal, and then people see the capability, they'll talk the language.
Yeah.
So I think it's revolutionaries, top down, bottom up. I think it's ChatGPT moments like your report speaks about, and then I think it's programs. There is no power without programs. So you've got to have real programs developing real capabilities, then we'll all speak the language.
Yeah, absolutely. James, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, no, those were great points, and so we can't rely on revolutionaries because those people change out, and I've definitely seen that in the space domain in particular. So you need, I agree with you, you need programs. If you really want to convince the warfighter, then it's really important to try and get biotech capabilities injected into both the service experimentation campaigns, but also the joint ones that we run out of R&E, because this is where the rubber meets the road. You can bring the tech to the warfighter, let them play around with it, let them get it dirty, let them use it in the most realistic context that we can, and then you'll have more interest in actually going through the very painful and elongated process of actually budgeting for capability X, Y, or Z in a program of record. It's really the unfortunate way that we do business now. I know that there's the PPBE Commission, and there's a lot of interest on Capitol Hill and within the building about reform generally, but that's really key. Just one quick thing on literacy. As much as we need bioliteracy, and I agree with everything Paul said, we need industry, and we need to help industry become more security literate.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really want to focus on in R&E. And we're kicking around ideas. I don't know if it's one-day read-ins or just things that we can do, because when I read the intel, it's stunning how much the Chinese are really going after the companies in this room, right? And they're doing it in very creative ways, in ways that are indirect. And so we need to make sure that that industry understands the scale of the threat, the different vectors that the adversary is using to try and make sure that we have a very secure supply chain and secure capabilities.
Yes, absolutely. A two-way conversation. General Ray, of course, the Benz group is that intersection of security literate business executives. Any observations there or lessons learned that you'd like to offer?
Yeah, there's a few things I could throw on top of the comments made here, and they're really important points. I think when you consider what the military has in terms of a daily obligation to care and feed for a force. I mean, 11 years ago, we did a budget every other year. Now we do it every year. So we break it and build it, break it and build it. So it's really tough to bring in a new thing. And certainly when you're encumbered by old things that you can't get rid of, then your margin and capacity to go do things. I think the innovators at the tactical edge were just as good as anybody else. It's the enterprise agility to become a different thing. I mean, if R&E can continue to innovate, but A&S can't keep up, you've got the 55-inch chest and the 10-inch thighs, and you're not a warfighting capability. And so there's this ability to bring the business world in to say that we actually are savvy. I think that was one of the things we enjoyed watching the business community going, holy cow, we actually are in the national security business.
Yeah.
And I think that more and more of them are seeing, as the circle of things we call national security grows every day, then you bring more and more business into that, and they have an ownership. But I'll go back to this idea that if you're going to try to rebuild your palm and rebuild your system, and you do it every year, getting a new thing in is really tough. you've got to have some help from the outside, because there's no way you could lift all those enabling capabilities. We have to create a great environment for it. It's not just a culture issue, it's a structural issue. Cost plus contracts, 10%. Money goes where it's treated well, and not at 10%. And so that becomes, where is there a better place to put your money? There's too many. So getting people in the same room to have these conversations about how we build this and how we de-risk it, I think the business community would be very welcoming to that conversation. And that at Ben's, we're glad to host those kinds of things, particularly when no one's making money on a particular issue. Then we find that the conversation gets tremendously candid, which is exactly what we need to have.
Yeah, if I may, just a moderator prerogative of an observation that we were really heartened by we did something like 2,000 stakeholder consultations in the development of the Commission's report, and we're really heartened by the enthusiasm that we've heard from many corners of the biotechnology industry about being of service, being helpful to the Department of Defense, and I think there's an opportunity to seize upon there.
Ask yourself whether or not BlackRock, in their own, business model, went after the Panama, deal.
Yeah.
That's, full well that there was a national security motivation, and there was a connection between government and industry to go do something.
Right.
That wasn't the business model that they would be following. So I think you'll see more opportunities like that to actually create those connections.
Absolutely. And I think on the flip side, a call, another thing we heard very consistently was, we want to raise our hands to be helpful, to be of service, but we don't know how. We don't know where to start. We don't know who to talk to. We don't know what to make. And so, one of the Commission's observations is around government being a better customer of biotechnologies, and it's really about this dynamic, which is bioliteracy in the U.S. government, security literacy. I'm going to borrow that now forever, James. Thank you for that. Within industry and kind of building those ties. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for a fantastic conversation, for your leadership in this space, your support of the Commission and its work, and thank you.
Thank you.